let's shift gears to the Kansas City Current. They've also got some recognizable names and an old friend at manager. Should be a good amount to talk about here with the KC Current. What are you going to be looking for specifically on Saturday afternoon and with regard to the complete season more generally?
On January 20th, the Kansas City Current signed Brazilian forward Bia Zanerato. And I think if we learned anything during the CONCACAF W Gold Cup, Bia is pretty fucking awesome.
She's good.
As Lil Jon once said, Bia Bia. I think the song, he may have written the song about her. I don't know.
Very prescient.
How many old rap references can we make on a podcast about women's football? We'll find out.
I'll put a little ticker on it. Just a little ding every time we hit one.
Nice. And they're going to pair Bia with Brazilian midfielder Debinha. So pretty solid player there as well. Not to mention that they are going to try to make some magic happen with 25-year-old Malawi international Temwa Chawinga. And yes, it's obviously worth mentioning. She is the sister of Paris Saint-Germain star Tabitha Chawinga. Was so incredibly psyched when I saw they signed her. Obviously, we've watched Tabitha play in the UEFA Women's Champions League. So very excited to see what Temwa looks like. And yeah, you mentioned it. It's the elephant in the room. There is this little Netflix documentary floating around out there. It was not great PR for Vlatko Andonovski. He is steering the ship in Kansas City. I think it's safe to say people are going to be monitoring how well that team does and how that team looks and how organized they look throughout the season.
Yeah, hopefully he's abandoned the go out there and be yourself. Or maybe he'll say go out there and be yourself to able to be a Tristan Ronaldo. Who knows? We'll see.
Nicely done.
I want to talk now about the Washington Spirit. Big move there. We did a little segment a while back on a certain team in Spain you might have heard of, Barcelona. Losing their manager to this Washington Spirit side. Also some big-time recognizable names. They went heavy into the draft. I think they were pretty aggressive with a little bit of a youth movement. Would be interested to know behind the scenes how much Jonathan Giraldez had to do with that. So this Washington Spirit side, they take on your Seattle Reign on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Where are you going to be fixated as you try to take in what's going on the pitch?
I will just be heckling Giraldez from the stands. No, I will not be. I will not be doing that. I don't really yell at the matches. I watch the games, bro. I'm not really. I'll have a couple Frosties. I'll enjoy myself, but I'm not a big yeller. I will say though, I talked about the games I went to last season. The manager for the Courage kept leaving the technical area, kept walking out of his box to yell at the fourth official. And I did stand, we were sitting 2 rows back, and I just stood up and I was like, make him stand in the technical area. Like, he's not allowed to do that. But that was about as loud as I got. Anyway, I digress.
What a funny thing to just get up in arms over. Like, I'm not a heckler, but I've got to draw the lines somewhere, and leaving the technical area is clearly where I'm drawing the line. The lines are actually drawn right there on the field.
It was very easy to know where to stand, and you see every manager do it. They stand right on like the intersection of them. Mm-hmm. That's fine. I got no problem with that. But like he was just giving it to the fourth official, and the fourth official was a young person, and I was just like, yo, this guy is so obviously trying to influence the match. And I know every manager does it. Again, sorry, I'm off on a digression. It is funny that was the thing. But like everybody around me was like, man, isn't he supposed to stand in that box? I was like, yes, he is. I'm like, get this guy out of here. Anyway, so yeah, again, what am I going to be looking for when I likely attend the match on Sunday in Seattle? I mean, come on, man. Washington, they signed Ashley Hatch to a new 3-year contract. They signed free agent Casey Kruger to shore up the back line.
Nice.
They acquired the 3rd and 5th pick of the draft. And with those picks, they scooped up Croy Bethune from the University of Georgia, Hal Hirschfeld from Clemson, and Kate Weisner from Penn State. Mm-hmm. Giraldez is going to have some decisions to make when it comes to those young players. You don't know how much you can play them right away. I understand that. But just go ahead and pencil in Trinity Rodman with the rest of those vets. And he has an awful lot to work with right away. Luckily, we know Giraldez knows how to deal with a lot of talent on a single roster. I can say that with a pretty great certainty.
That he does. And yeah, definitely going to be watching Corey Bethune. We had our guy Chris from Soccer Dossier on right after the NWSL draft, and I think he had Corey Bethune as the most likely to have a major impact this upcoming season. So definitely something for the Washington Spirit fans to be excited about. Where do you think their ceiling is? You think they're kind of like championship type aspirations?
I think I'm going to do this with a lot of teams, but I think they have to have championship aspirations. I mean, you have Trinity Rodman, you have Ashley Hatch, now you have Casey Kruger, you pick up Croy Bethune. What else are you doing there? You went out and signed the manager from the most elite club in the world. What else are you going for there? I do remember watching them. I saw them play live last year too, and kind of looking at their lineup up and down and being like, what's this team's record? Like, this team should be way better than it is. So, yeah, I think they should be out there looking to host a playoff game.
That's an interesting point, because what do you do when you are underperforming? Probably look at the manager and make a change there, a little bit of a kind of philosophical, strategic, tactical change. And sometimes that's enough to kind of turn the whole thing around. So we'll definitely have an eye on the Spirit team this season, and you're going to get to see them up close against your Seattle Reign. I do want to fast forward here, though. North Carolina Courage. Really good regular season for the Courage. They finished just 4 points behind league leaders San Diego Wave in the standings. Kind of disappointing in the playoffs, though. As a 3 seed, you get bounced in the quarterfinals. Granted, it was to the eventual champions, Gotham FC. Couldn't notch a goal in that one. I have a feeling they're going to have a different kind of energy, different vibes heading into this season. What are you going to be looking for from this Courage side?
So when their manager, Sean Nahas, is not being yelled at by me to stay in his technical area, he does have some good players to manage. And I will say they traded the number 5 pick in the NWSL draft, and they added experienced midfielder and forward Ashley Sanchez from the Washington Spirit. That was one of those trades that when you saw it, you're like, oh shit, what's Washington doing here? But turns out they had some pretty good plans. Sanchez had 5 goals and an assist for the Spirit last season, but the Courage is surely looking for her to increase that production, mainly because, and in just the bummer of all bummer news, 2023 NWSL MVP, the dynamic Brazilian forward, Carolyn, tore her ACL near the end of last season, making it pretty unlikely that she'll return this year. They'll need Sanchez to pick up some of that slack because Carolyn scored 10 goals and had 3 assists last season. And when you watch her play in person, especially when you watch her play in person against your team, is a terrifying winger to play against. It's just so quick, so skilled. So obviously a giant hole there. I do think it's worth noting that the Courage improved its back line. It acquired German defender Feli Rausch. I know we talk about some of those advanced metrics on FB Football Reference. I encourage everybody to look at Feli Rausch's advanced metrics, those scouting report stats on FB They pop off the screen. She played for perennial Frauen Bundesliga and Champions League contender Wolfsburg. She's an experienced national team player who does a little bit of everything from defense and going into the attack. In an off season of exciting signings, she could be a real under-the-radar gem.
I'm looking at some of those stats at the moment. Very impressive, courtesy of our friends at FB Still very much in her prime, 27 years old. And that squad in Wolfsburg, they've obviously had tremendous success. Excellent signing for the Courage. Should we be thinking about this team as a contender? It does kind of feel like, obviously with the loss of Caroline, devastating injury, that maybe nudges them down. I like to think about with like 14 teams, we're going to have a top 4 or 5, and then maybe like a middle 4 or 5, and then maybe a bottom 4 or 5. Yeah. It does kind of feel like that injury, despite the signings and the personnel moves, maybe bumps this Courage team down into that middle tier.
I think he kind of has to, man. 10 goals and 3 assists and just the gravity that Carolyn provided. I mean, hard to come back from that. So I think that, they're going to have to play a defensive style. Again, that's why I always say that's why they play the matches. But if I had to place one sports take chip on that, I would assume that you see them fall down the table a little bit.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. They take on the Houston Dash. This one's going down Saturday, 7 p.m. What should we be on the lookout for with regard to this Houston Dash team?
Please score goals, Houston. I'm asking you politely. They scored 16 goals in league play last season.
Ouch.
For anybody who doesn't remember how many league games there were 22 matches. So 16 goals in 22 matches is not good. It's not what you want.
Tough to win that way.
Hard to win. Hard to win when you score fewer than 1 goal per match. And from what I can tell in the stats, 13 of those goals were from open play. So not exactly a dynamic offense. They wanted to make some changes. Step number 1, they hired Fran Alonso, a native of Madrid, as their new manager. Alonso spent the last few years managing Celtic FC in the Scottish Women's Premier League. Under his leadership, the club won 3 of the 4 cup competitions it played in, and the club had a record of 79 wins, 9 draws, and 11 losses during his tenure.
Let's go.
I think that's pretty good. Turns out Celtic, pretty much as good in the women's league as it is in the men's league. Who would have thought? Mm-hmm. The club is looking for Mexican forward Maria Sanchez, who we talked about in the CONCACAF W Gold Cup. You want her to have more looks on goal this season to improve upon her 4-goal, 4-assist campaign last year. And they also recently acquired Cece Kaiser. She should help. She put up 6 goals and 2 assists for the Kansas City Current last season. So somebody looked around and said, hey, we got to score some goals around here. No shot at their defense, though. I mean, I think they only conceded 18 last season in league play, if I recall correctly. But still, 16 goals, as you mentioned. Hard to win that way.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I love the Kaiser pickup. I like her game. I think they're going to need some of that dynamism from her.
Oh, yeah.
She notched 13 goals in 35 appearances for the KC Current. So obviously that goal problem that you mentioned, hopefully she's got something to say about that. And this feels like probably another team at best, maybe in that middle section. We'll see. There is that new manager bounce that I think we can expect.
Yeah.
But talent-wise, things I think are a little thin with this Houston side. But obviously that's why they play the games. Another good part about the knockout bracket, you make that top 6. And the way the standings shook out last season, a lot of clumping in the middle there. So a couple wins here and there, you steal one here, you steal one there, and you might be able to sneak in. And then it's basically knockout football at that point. And I think the season is kind of so long. The final doesn't take place till November.
Right.
That's a long ways away. So when you have a young team, a lot of time for them to kind of like gel, mature, a new manager, time to kind of figure out what should we be doing? How can we maximize this roster that we have? So who knows? I think that's kind of a little bit of a silver lining. If you're a Houston Dash fan, we'll be locked into them as well this weekend when they take on the Courage. Again, Saturday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. We are covering women's football every week here on Into the Channel, sometimes twice a week if we're in good form. Let us know what we missed in the comments. Obviously, everyone out there who chimes in elevates the show. You have no idea how much Grant and I appreciate it. Like Grant always says, this is a learning podcast, and we learn just as much from each and every one of you as we do from our independent research and from watching the games, bro. Be sure to like if you liked and subscribe if you love the women's game as much as your boys do. This week, mega NWSL preview. We covered all 14 NWSL teams as they kick off the season. In our next episode, we're going to preview all 4 UEFA Women's Champions League quarterfinal matchups as well. So if you're not locked into the Champions League, do yourself a favor. Let's broaden those horizons. This is a global game. There is talent on every corner of the planet, and we're doing as much as we can to cover as much of it as we can. Thank you for hanging out with us. Remember to subscribe, and thank you to my co-host, Mr. Grant Engel.
You couldn't have said it better, my good man. Those Champions League games, in my veins, brother. That is some good football. But the NWSL, it's one of the world's elite leagues. We're watching it. We're picking up steam. We're trying to pick up as much as we can. If this video was about one of your favorite teams or your favorite team, let us know what we missed. Let us know what we overlooked. We are trying to pick up as much knowledge as possible. You know, we've watched some of the games from the past seasons, but we don't claim to know it all. So just drop it in the comments. Let us know what we need to cover for next time. We'll be watching the games, bro. We know you will too. We will see you guys next time.